I think the ukulele is one of the most accessible instruments out there, but that doesn't mean we don't have to spend some time out how to differentiate.
You're listening to That Music Podcast with Bryson Tarvin, the curriculum designer and educational consultant behind That Music Teacher and the Elementary Music Summit. Each week, Bryson and his guests will dive into the reality of being an elementary music teacher and how music can truly be transformative in the lives of the students you serve. Show notes and resources mentioned in this episode can be found at thatmusicteacher.com.
Welcome back to That Music Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about ways to differentiate when teaching ukulele in the general music classroom. I'm really excited because, like I said, we've been talking a lot about ukulele these past few weeks, but I love the ukulele. I love how relatively accessible it is, especially when you're thinking about other string instruments like a guitar or a violin or anything like that. It really makes it, I think it really is pretty accessible. But that doesn't mean that it is 100% accessible for everyone without doing a little bit of work on ourselves. So one of the first things that came to mind when I was told that I was finally going to get recorders is, how do I make sure this is accessible to all of my students? So first of all, I have some students that have limited mobility in their hands and their arms. So I wanted to make sure that I came up with a way that we were able to make sure that they were still able to make music with the ukulele. So there are a few things that I've done for that. First of all, I bought a chord buddy. It is essentially a plastic box that goes on top of the fretboard. So instead of having to do different chord shapes, all the student has to do is push down one button and it'll essentially push down all the different strings it needs to play that chord. So that's great because all they have to do is push one thing down rather than having a specific formation. So especially to have like maybe limited fine motor or have limited mobility in their hand in general, that makes it so all they really have to do is put it in their hand and push something down rather than hold the instrument there and put a specific shape down. When it comes to strumming, I'll be honest, I don't have my students use picks. I really like the idea of teaching them how to using their fingers. I get a little bit of flack sometimes because, you got to build up some calluses. You got to figure out how to do it without slicing your hand. But I think one, we don't have to worry about the picks getting stuck in the ukuleles, getting lost, getting broken, strumming too hard because they're using their hands. Now, how do I make that accessible to students that might have a limited mobility in their hands or limited fine motor skills? So what I did is I actually went and bought this. It's about the size of a saucer, a foam. I think it's technically like a foam or like a felt sound panel that you would put on your wall, but it's only about the size of a saucer. And then I traced essentially the size of a giant pick made out of that, and then I cut that out, and that student is able to grasp it because it's large and use that as a to strum instead of using their hands. So that's kind of the two things that I did for some students that are in my classes. Those were kind of the biggest ones that I wanted to think of. Obviously, differentiation is more than just that. It's making sure that they're able to access the curriculum, not just figuring out how to play ukulele. So I've figured out a few different ways to differentiate ukulele instruction. And the first one I learned kind of by accident. Not necessarily by accident, but I didn't really think of it beforehand. It kind of came to me in the moment, and then I stuck with it because I thought it worked really well. So we started the ukulele by learning a song that had two chords in it. I taught them one chord, and then if the song came on and it had the other chord, they'd play. And then eventually we learned the second chord. So this is when I said, all right, you have a choice. You can play either both chords, or you can just play the first chord we learned. So if you think you're still struggling with that second chord and you want to just kind of work on the first chord, then all you have to do is play that first chord. If you're ready for a little bit more of a challenge, you can play both chords. So in this way, students were able to choose. Students were able to pick which was the best choice for them, and they were able to switch in the middle of the song if they got bored or if they do try the other part. What I loved about this is, since we were all playing together, nobody had to know what anyone else was doing. One thing that I've done a lot of in the ukulele, as we've been doing the ukulele, is understanding that everyone is going to learn at a different pace. There are a lot of different skills that are going together to make this work. And I think by allowing students to choose how many chords they play, one, it gives them a break if they need it. Some students might need more time changing chords. So if there's a really fast chord, maybe they ignore that one. And I've used that strategy as we've learned more and more chords. So sometimes maybe we have three chords in a song. Some students are going to play all three chords. Some students are going to play two chords. And then some students might just play one chord, depending on where we're at, what they need, and what they need more practice on. But what's really great is I was able to extend this. So I had some songs that just had a chord in it that we hadn't learned yet. And honestly, I was like, we probably won't learn that for a while. But I said, hey, if you are feeling super confident in the three chords that we've been working on, and you want to play, because it only happened like one time in the whole song. And I said, if you want to try this new chord, give it a shot. And I always talk about, is it okay to mistakes? Yes, but I just want you to give it your best shot. That I feel like is the biggest way that I've been able to differentiate is just allowing the students to choose how many chords they do. Same things go with strum patterns. Some of the play alongs that I found on YouTube had a strum pattern that went along with it. So I said, hey, if you're feeling pretty good with the strumming, you can do the strum pattern that's on the video. If you're still struggling with the chords and just want to focus on those, you can just do down, 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 or whatever works best for you. Allowing them to choose that. Again, we're still making music. We're still all going to be part of the song. And no one really has to know who's a little bit farther along than others. So all in all, the biggest suggestion I have for anyone who's wanting to differentiate the ukulele, offer choices. Give them levels. Allow them to choose their difficulty level. Allow them to choose their support level. And that is kind of the biggest thing that I've seen successful is not saying, all right, I'm just going to play this song, all three chords with this drumming pattern, because like some students that aren't able to do that, and they'll either stop or they'll just pretend, or they'll try their hardest and just feel frustrated. But bringing them choices allows them to scaffold themselves, or allows me as the educator to scaffold for them, or to give them more support or less support as they need it, so that they can get better and they can make progress and they can continue to grow. In psychology, we have the zone of proximal development. So how do we get them to traverse their ZPD, goodness. How do we get them to get higher? How do we give them the least support they can to make the best possible growth? And that is where differentiation comes in, especially when we can do it in a way that removes the social aspect of student. They know that I'm only doing one chord. Not really. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and no one is really focusing on anyone else. And that's that kind of building of the social environment around differentiation can take a while, but I've seen really good success with it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, it would be great if you left a review wherever you're listening to. Those reviews help us out so much. They help us get in front of new listeners, as well as letting us know what you want to hear more of here on the podcast. If you haven't already, I would like to invite you to join us inside that music teacher community, which is a growing online library of professional development specifically for elementary music teachers. In addition, it's a community where we're able to support each other and essentially serve as that PLC that we actually want to be a part of, by people that also understand that music education background. To learn more, you can check out the link in the show notes or head over to thatmusicteacher.com, and we'd love to have you. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We'll see you next week, every Wednesday here on the podcast. And if no one has told you, I'm really excited and I'm really so thankful that you are making a difference in the lives of the students that you teach.